Hi, welcome. Today's session we're going to talk about the application launcher, or the waffle menu, as some people might call it. Just to introduce myself, my name is Wes Hackett. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at a Microsoft partner called Easy SharePoint. We build Office 365 applications and Azure-based applications that accelerate Office 365 intranets and collaboration systems. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and you can get me on Twitter or via my email address on the screen. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to go through the introduction to the app launcher. We're going to look at the app launcher itself and the My Apps page which is associated with it. We're going to delve into looking at the Azure Marketplace and the applications that are available and why that looks at the application launcher. We're going to add an existing application, and finally we're going to cover out adding a custom application, so something the organisation themselves build. So why did Microsoft build the application launcher? Well, if you'd seen the suite bar in Office 365 grow and grow and grow, so it started out with sites, newsfeed, people, the Exchange items. As soon as you put Enterprise Project Server, you got EPM items appearing, you put Power BI, you got Power BI, and soon you had a drop-down menu on an ellipsis at the end of the suite bar. Obviously, when it contracts onto a mobile device, that became an even worse user experience. So Microsoft moved away from that and added this application launcher, the waffle button in the top left-hand corner, about probably 8 weeks to 12 weeks ago. With it, they gave us the ability to add new applications, so not only the things that you license, so when you bought Power BI, your Power BI appears on there, Project Server appears on there, but you can now, as a developer and an organisation, you can buy things from the Azure Marketplace and build your own applications that can appear as tiles within that experience. Another thing that it's really good for is a pervasive version of navigation across the whole of the Office 365 suite. So often an intranet manager will define a top-level navigation, and then as soon as you step out of SharePoint, you no longer have access to some of those line of business systems. Well, with the app launcher, you've got that pervasive navigation on every single Office 365 service. So whether you're in your mailbox, your calendar, or your SharePoint sites, or your groups, you've still got access to the same menu. And then finally, the My Apps page, which we'll see in the demo in a second, which is the collection of all the applications that you have access to beyond the ones that you've actually pinned to the launcher. So hopefully that will play. Are we playing? I think we are. Put that into there. Okay, so the application launcher is available in the top left-hand side of the screen. So here we are in a normal team site. We launch out the application launcher here, and you see that these are all of the items that you're licensed for as this particular user. So I'm on this tenant on E3 plan, so I've got Exchange deployed, I've got SharePoint deployed. I'm also a tenancy administrator, so I've got admin tile there. And this is almost the default that you'll see as a new user to a tenant. So you get all of the items that you've bought a license and assigned a license for that user in this particular order. If you've chosen to use Yammer as your social network, it will be Yammer. If you're using the SharePoint social, then that will say newsfeed, and it will launch off to the SharePoint newsfeed. Okay. So again, catching up, click your way. We can drag around those items. If I catch it in the video, it's very difficult. There we go. So I can drag these tiles around, so I can pick up the Yammer and I can put it first. So as a user, I get an individualized menu structure. I can put those tiles in the order I want. We also get a contextual item off an ellipsis in the top left-hand corner of each tile. And that gives us a couple of options. It's unpinned from the launcher altogether, which we'll see in a second. And it's also pinned to the nav bar. Now I've just picked up the Yammer icon there and I've pinned it to my nav bar, and you'll see that the Yammer icon's appeared on the right-hand side over here. Now that only works if you've got Exchange Online as a mailbox. So the way behind the scenes that these settings are stored, they're stored in a mailbox for you as an individual. So if you've got Exchange deployed, you can make these pins. If you haven't, then it's going to not be available to you as a user. And I can pin up to 3 items for that. So I'm going to, there we go, pin OneDrive and pin Delve, and we've now got those 3 items up in the corner. Now you can only pin a maximum of 3 items, so once you reach your limit, you've got to take something out to put another item in. So I can unpin Yammer and I can repin OneNote there on our nav bar. So that is the app launcher items. I can also unpin from it altogether, so if I don't want my calendar appearing, I as a user can take that off. Okay, and that is, sorry, wrong click. Okay, there we go. So I can click the My Apps page and I'll get my list of applications. Now, one of the things here is that this set, again, is the licensed Office 365 service. So these are all the things that this user's got a license for. It also correlates to if you click the Office 365 logo and go to portal.microsoft.com, which is your Office landing page, you'll get that collection there. Interesting to note that the My Apps below do 2 things. It's going to pick up the things that you've got from Azure Active Directory, and it's also going to pick up things that you as a user have installed to your OneDrive for Business, so SharePoint apps that you've added to OneDrive for Business. So you get that collection put together. And you can pin those SharePoint apps and do the same contextual changes as you can on the launcher itself. So I can get the app details to see where the application's come from, who's published it. I can repin my calendar. Oh, there we go. Pin to launcher, so I can put that back. And now let's put my calendar back, and if I want to put it back into its normal place, I can just rejig those items. So as a user, you've got this contextualized menu that's individual to you, and it roams across the Office 365 service. Okay, so if we look at the marketplace, so who's familiar with the Azure Marketplace? Anyone delved into there? There's about 4,500 marketplace applications, some of which are applications in the truest sense. They do something like Salesforce. Others are social applications like Facebook and LinkedIn that you can enable Azure Active Directory single sign-on to, and then it will start appearing in your application launcher and My Apps pages. So why would you use marketplace apps? Well, you want to improve the user experience. You want to make your Office 365 tenant a go-to place from a user experience point of view. So think about pinning a lot of the common applications that the organization use, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Salesforce, Pinterest, whatever you can think of that the organization are generally going off to anyway, then by all means, go in, add them as applications, and then we can enable single sign-on, as you saw in Kirk Evans' session about Azure AD, to those applications. A final really good thing for corporate accounts, like Twitter and Facebook, where you've got a marketing team that share one singular account, is you can go into the marketplace and pick up that Twitter, and you can assign that corporate account into Azure AD, and then you can grant that assignment to a specific group of users. And if you've got Azure Premium, you can do that by group. So you can do it users in standard and then by group in Premium. So we're going to walk through this scenario around a shared group. No, come on, back. No, back. So I started this demonstration with a shared mailbox. So we've registered an Office 365 shared mailbox. I've not done anything particularly complex here. I've just granted the marketing team, in this case my 3 users, access to it. And then as an individual, I can go and open that mailbox and get access to it. So all the sort of direct messages and mentions that we get on Twitter are going to come to this particular mailbox. So there we can see some of the registrations from earlier. And we then use that to create a shared Twitter account. So this is my demonstration Twitter account. And we can just see that it's going to take a quick tweet. So we're just going to type in a tweet. Come on, type. Tweet that. So that's using our shared account just to check it worked. So how do we actually configure this into Azure AD to make sure that we can use it? So what we do is we go into our Azure portal, and I've got multiple directories here, but I've picked up the same one that's associated to this tenancy. And we're logged into that Azure AD. This one's a standard version. We can see here that premium you could go off and try. And then along the top, we've got applications. So we come in and we click into applications. And alongside those applications, you can see already that I've got some. So by default, we've got the Exchange and SharePoint Online, and I've also added Visual Studio Online, GitHub, and SurveyMonkey, so things that I use frequently in a single sign-on context. So we go in, we add a new application, and we're greeted with these huge amount of applications, and you can see here we've got dev services, education, finance, so the marketplace is vast, and to scroll through and try and find them is quite challenging. So Microsoft will show you the common ones that people are using, but also then we get the search box. So to look for Twitter, I just usually go and search, because why scroll? So if we go and type in Twitter, and we get into that application. So that application has now been added into our Azure Active Directory, but we haven't yet configured it. So we've got two parts to the configuration. We've got configure the single sign-on option, and we've got the assignment of users. So we start with the configuration of the single sign-on. So Azure AD has given us two options for single sign-on. It's providing us with federated sign-on and password sign-on. So password sign-on replays through a browser plugin the password that the credential that's stored in Azure AD Vault that the users put in or the administration team have put in. Existing single sign-on, so using federation, is going to go through that ADFS cycle of going out and federating your identity. So if we just click through, just take a quick look at existing sign-on. So you get a different option. We get a panel. That's where you'd put your sign-on URL for your login page. We're going to choose password sign-on for this particular demo. So now we've got that set up to do that password replay. So now we have to go and assign our users, because currently we don't have any users that this will show up for. So I'm going to pick my demo user, click assign, and you'll notice on this box, we've got this option. I want to enter the Twitter credentials that everybody will use on behalf of the users. So in this scenario where we've got a marketing team that's using the same credential, we're going to enter it for them. You could leave that unchecked, and when they clicked that icon for the first time, they will be prompted to enter a credential to log in. So this, again, is where, with Facebook, you'd probably leave that unchecked. User clicks it first time, they put their Facebook credentials in, and then every subsequent time, they'll be logged silently in. And quickly type. Okay, so now we've got assignment. So this will change from no to yes. So we now have Adam Barr in my tenant is assigned that particular user. And I'll go through and do the rest of the admin team. So this is what I was talking about with the difference between standard Azure AD and premium Azure AD. If you're doing premium, you could have created a directory group, put the users into the group, and then just on one assignment, that group to the Twitter. But because this is standard, you've got to go through each and every user to make that assignment. That's a bit painful. So another reason why you might want to invest in Azure Premium if you were doing a lot of these applications for a large bulk of users. I'm sure IT pros would actually automate this with PowerShell if they so see fit. So now we've got our marketing team with that single sign-on. We go back to the dashboard and we'll just have a quick look at the dashboard. So the dashboard itself is going to show us the activity for this. So once you've got that Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter application configured, you as an administrator get some basic reporting, which is how many times it's being clicked, what's the volume per day. We also get a single sign-on URL. So if we click this URL, that's going to go straight as if we've clicked the icon in the app launcher. So if you think about a marketing communication via email or something like that, you might have a link in it that says, okay, we've launched this new service, click here to register, and it actually, if you use that URL, it will go through the asking for sign-on process as if you'd clicked the icon at the top of the screen. We also can look around the users and we can see, annoyingly, I found there's no filter by yes and no by clicking the top, which hopefully they'll improve. And then finally, if we come out of the sign-on, we'll actually see the sign-on experience. So currently you can see that I'm not signed in. So it's asking me to log in up the top. I've got my Twitter account just in public view. If I go up to Access Panel, so with Azure AD, there's two ways in. As with all Office 365 things, there's 2 ways in. Azure AD itself provides a link called myapps.microsoft.com, which takes you to the Azure Access Panel. So this lists all of your applications you've got registered. And this is where the user would be able to, if it was a per user assignment of passwords, they would be able to update their credentials. So if they change their Facebook password, they'd come here to update their password. You'll notice that Exchange and SharePoint isn't breaking down your SharePoint sites, it's one thing, so you're launching into that one application. And if I click in to Twitter, that's now going to silently log it in. And if you blink, you'll see it type the password for me and log me in. So I'm now logged in the top right. So that's one single click, haven't had to enter my credentials, and that's come out into Twitter. And if we repeat the process from the app launcher, and one of the reasons that these are all videoed is there's actually some delays in these steps because Azure AD caches a lot of these things for performance, and this, for it to appear here, can take upwards of 10 to 15 minutes. So we go to our My Apps page, and our My Apps page will now list Twitter. There we go, it's in the bottom there. And if we click that from our My Apps page, we're now launching into Twitter with exactly the same process. There it goes, replaying the password. And we're logged in. So it's quite an easy way to improve that user experience around existing services, software services out on the general marketplace. It also gives us that secure way of, Yeah, you can pin it, yeah. So everything in the My Apps page from that context menu, I could have pinned that up to the app launcher itself. No. So at the moment, no. But towards the end of the session, we're going to talk about some of the improvements that are going to be announced at build, or a couple of them that I've been given the okay to say, and that'll be one of them. The administration functions are going to be improved. So next scenario is adding an existing application. So lots of organisations have a whole, estate worth of SharePoint portals, of line of business ASP.NET applications, of whatever else it is they deploy via the web, that they might want to pin. So loads of times when you do an intranet project with SharePoint Online, people are saying, okay, well, I need to integrate to all of these different services, and I need, there's links here, and I want a home page with 1,000 links on it, and I want actually Group A from this country to have this finance system, and Group B from this country to have this finance system. Well, actually, if you start taking a step back and go, well, if we register all of those as Azure applications, and we assign the right users, we've got the audiences getting the right tile, and we've done no code. I've seen some pretty complex coded up solutions to achieve that, and now with the app launcher, you've actually got that in your pocket. As Azure administrators, they can go and configure that stuff, and it's quite straightforward. Other things that you can do, you can put in a public URL. So there's, the technique to get these things registered is actually the same. So it means I can put in a public company website URL, and again, I can fill in a shortcoming of the Office 365 service, and I can put a link to the home of my SharePoint part. How many times did people go, oh, I just want a home link, and you see people write in jQuery to put it in, and it only works on SharePoint. Well, actually, no, we can do that. We can just register it as an application. So we're going to adding an existing app. Get forward a little bit. And we'll look at the public website. So I got asked to put a link into one of our product pages by the organisation. You know, a lot of the developers were asking, okay, where's the latest press releases for the product? I need to understand, you know, whether my feature's being promoted so that I know how to, you know, improve it. So we've put our product page, if you like, into our app launcher. So that there is pushed up into the app launcher as well. So here we are with a tile. Interesting, you'll notice that it's got this grey border, and again, one hopes Microsoft improve this to actually give us a better fidelity of using the whole colour box for our icon like they do their own service. So I can click that, and this time we didn't get a prompt to log in because this is a public website. So it's done that replay and it said, oh, there's no credential, it's just on HTTPS. Just go in. So I've given a link to a public website. So that, of course, would work for the access panel as well. Same experience, log straight in, and we're on that public web page. So in Azure AD, we can see that that's now listed, as I can, you know, this is already pre-configured, that's listed like any other application. So, you know, that's the Twitter example we did earlier, it's now listed alongside. So you've got the same controls. The difference this time is that the sign-in URL is that product URL. It's not the, you know, the ADFS endpoint, it's not the login page of that particular service, it's just a web page. And also we can set that logo, it should appear in a second. So that image itself, if we click on the upload logo, we can pick a 214 by 214 pixel logo and stick it whatever we want. So again, we've got some control over the brand element of that icon. There we go, put the URL in. You'll see that, interesting, because you've given it, you've created an application, one thing to note is that you've given that application the ability to sign into your AD to do that password replay, even though it doesn't use it, it's not passing that website the credential. There's one point to note is that this technique we're about to show differs from the stuff that's on IT Unity's website, and that's because there's been some Azure AD updates. So the way that Jasper's article describes this is now slightly outdated compared with the service. You used to go through and register it by doing a marketplace app and custom. Now you just go straight into saying, register an application that I'm building, which we'll see in a second. And again, like we did for the Twitter app, for the users we want it to appear for, we have to do the assignment. So we've got the assignment for there. So if we step through doing a new one, so from our list of applications, we've got a little add at the bottom here, and we click down into add. I do want to click before I go. And, oh, too quick. Right, so we get two options. Add an application my organisation is developing, or add an application from the gallery. So Jasper's article, that one would have been picking from the gallery, doing custom, putting the URL in. Doesn't work anymore. You now have to do it by doing add an application and my org is developing. I don't know why. I'm still trying to find out. But it's the same steps, you just different option. So we give it a name, give it the URL that we want to sign into. So this will be my SharePoint root. So this is just the root URL of my tenant. Paste that into the app ID. So that's just giving it a unique identifier. Whizzing away. There we go. So that's now added our app. So at this point, we've got the horrible box logo. So we're just going to pick up our logo. So there was one I did earlier. Now, some of the things to note on logo sign, so it gives you information, so it's actually 215 pixels, sorry. Now it tells you that you should create an icon inside a coloured box, which the icon itself is only 94 by 94. Now that would be true if Microsoft were using the whole of their box. So if you looked at the Outlook icon, or the Mail icon, the central part is 94 by 94 and the rest of the colour is 215. But Microsoft then take your 215 and constrain it to 94 by 94. So at the moment, ignore that line and make your icon 215 pixels big, and it will look okay by the time it renders into the app launcher. Gives you 3 file formats: bitmap, JPEG, PNG, and important to note, it's got to be less than 100 kilobytes. And you can imagine why that is because if it navigates and it downloads it, and you do that quite a lot, and there's lots of them, that's quite a lot of page weight. So you don't want a 5 megabyte photo quality icon for a tiny little picture. So we just update our icon. Takes a second to show up. There we go, nice stock image. Go and do our user assignment. So again, it's not, it's very repetitive, these steps. They're just different use cases. We go and pick our demo user. And at this point, it would take up to 15 minutes to show up, right? So it's going to cache. So we'll see that we've already waited those 15 minutes, and it's showing up in our My Apps page. Now, I've had situations where that's taken 24 hours to show up or 48 hours to show up. It doesn't seem to be very consistent at the moment about where these Azure applications show up and whether it's the service is taking updates behind the scenes or not, I'm not sure, but it will eventually show up on that My Apps page. So we can pin that to the launcher, as we mentioned earlier. So we've just chosen to pin it. Like that. And now we can see that we've just dragged it and we're going to stick it up in the top left-hand corner. And again, at the moment, there's no way for you as an administrator to deploy that and put it in a position. So you are still reliant on the user doing that sort of stuff. And we can just see that clicking those takes us to the standard tenant homepage, the boring team site. So that's how you, as a implementer, can put in those comms director requests of, I'd like it to go to my news center or my intranet homepage, and I'd like the public website to be listed, and I'd like the HR portal to be listed and be prevalent across all of my service. That's now giving us a way of sticking that in without doing some kind of weird jQuery hack where we put it in after the page loads only on the SharePoint side. So again, it's kind of improving the user experience, using the tools. Yeah. Yep. Yes, there is. The question was if you've got an organisation of hundreds to thousands of users, how you assign those applications to those users. With standard, the Office 365 associated Azure AD tenant, or the basic one, you have to do it on a per user basis at the moment. So you'd have to buy Azure Premium to get the group management, which is obviously a cost license increase. But you can, of course, Excel sheet, PowerShell, assign. There's an API, the Azure AD graph will allow you to do these assignments. So you can automate it in itself instead of button pushing. But yeah, you're doing the assignment at the moment with the standard edition on a user basis, which is a bit painful. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you think about dynamic groups where you're almost sort of getting pseudo role-based, where you're saying, okay, attribute, if you've got that attribute, you're in that group, that's yet another compelling factor of saying, okay, I've got an application that's assigned by group and it's a dynamic group where the users are coming and going, then you get a really nice experience with that. Yep. Yes, yeah. Yeah, all the links that you add in, whether that be an application, a URL, whatever, they're going to launch into a new tab. And at the moment, you can't control that. It's a bit like even when you click the Yammer one, it still launches into a new tab because Yammer's not part of the integral part of the service. Whether that will change, I don't know. So adding a custom application. So this is where you might be building an Azure hosted Office 365 application. You know, the names are interchangeable with these things. That's doing something. So it might be that you're building a bespoke HR system and you've got a MVC web application that's running out in Azure and you want to assign that in. Or you're building using the Office 365 APIs and you're building some kind of WYSI experience around calendars and mail and sites, and you're doing one of the line of business apps, like there's the example around the property management. All of these things are first-class citizens in the Azure application world. So the steps you go through is you register that application like we did any of the others with Azure AD, and then it will show in the app launcher. Again, it's, the steps are not hugely different. The thing with the custom application, there's two methods. There's registering the application using Visual Studio, so that's the developer way and the quick way and the one that's, for me, less prone for error. Or there's going and registering it manually, which is working out the permissions you need, then getting the bits for the web config, and then stick them in the web config. Now, the route you go depends on whether you've got an existing application you're enabling or whether you're starting from scratch and you want to build in Visual Studio. The end result is you're still going to register that application in Azure AD. So let's dive into another video. So what I use for this demonstration is on GitHub, there's an Office 365 multi-tenant application. It's just a very basic application that the MS team have published, which provides, using Office 365 API, it just allows you to read your contacts in your Outlook contacts list. One thing to note, when you pull that down, you need to do the NuGet package update because they're always out of date when you pull them out of GitHub, so that'll just recompile. And at this point, it's not registered. So we go into our Azure AD and we'll find that actually that's dropped down at the top. Applications my company owns, they're the ones we're bespoking. And our new application that we've just got our source code down for isn't registered. There's nothing there yet. And if we were doing manual, we would click add an application and we would go through the steps to do the manual stuff. And again, all of that information of manual registration is on the dev.office.com site. It's not particularly hard to follow, it's just a lot of manual cutting and pasting. Now, what we want to do if we're in Visual Studio is we want to go up to the project itself, we want to go to add, and we want connected service. We're going to pick up that connected service and we're going to get the Visual Studio tooling to do a lot of the legwork for picking that stuff up. Now, there's a step in between clicking that and this screen, which is log into Office 365 or log into Azure AD. Obviously, I didn't want to type my password for real, so I've already gone through that sign-in process. So normally it would say sign in, you'd get that prompt, you'd put your credentials in, and it would come back to this screen. So at this point, we're not registered, but we get this little icon here that says, yes, we'd like to register this application. And we can go in and register this app. There we go. That's going to click in. And what you will see in the output window, registering directly application. And now we've registered it. We get this application with client ID, and we get the client ID back from Azure AD. So that's done the manual steps for us in effectively what is one click. Now, for the purposes of this demo, we're going to just register the services we need. So we're going to do users and groups and contacts, just so that the demo itself of that code works. This isn't anything to do with the app launcher. It's just to get this demo working. So we're just giving it read and full control over the contacts. It's going to run up. So we're going to go and look at the Azure application registration. So there we were with no application. So we're just going to refresh the page. Takes a few seconds. And again, we have to drop the drop down. Just narrow our field, and this time we'll see our application's been listed, right? So it wasn't there a minute ago, and now it is. And we've got that name. It's currently running on my local host, so we've got local host. I'm not going to bother with an icon. I need to make it multi-tenant because that's what the demo code requires. So that's where you've got more than one company tenancy using that application. And you can see at the bottom the permissions relate to the dialog box in Visual Studio. So those are tied up. And those are the steps you'd have done manually and gone the other way by putting those config IDs. So we give our application a quick test because we just want to make sure that everything's hooked up before we try and make sure it appears in the launcher. So we do a sign in. So that's now calling Azure AD from this local host, and we can see that it's come back with a success. So we've used the graph AD, AD graph to log us in. Then we're going to click My Contacts. Just as a point to note, this is the kind of controller it comes into, so the contacts controller. And we can find there, we've got Mickey Mouse's account in my contacts list. So that's quite simple to set up. It obviously works, so now we're going to check that it's going to appear in our app launcher. So again, next step is to do the user assignment, because at the moment we didn't have that user assigned. Yeah, I've done the multi-tenant bit. So go to users, pick up our user. It's already done because Visual Studio's done that on our behalf, but if you did it manually, you'd be picking them up there. And we can see that our applications started appearing as an Azure app in our My Apps page. And again, that takes a little while to catch up. And we can click it. And it will appear up in our access panel. So again, it's keeping in correlation. Bearing in mind that when you click this, you'd have to have the local host version running, which I did. And it's going to launch out again, and we can see, because I've launched it from 365, it's already got the access token. I haven't got to do the login, and it's come back with my contacts. So that's a quick way of showing how you can add a bespoke application into your application launcher, so you can build your line of business systems and have them integrate. So as I mentioned, some of the Azure AD premium goodies, and why you might consider the Azure AD, is that group membership piece. So doing an assignment by group, you would have a marketing group. You'd put the users in the marketing group, and then you'd say, okay, Twitter application for that account, this group. Combine that with the dynamic groups in Azure AD, where you're doing attributes. So you could say, okay, all users with the Department of Marketing dynamically get created into this group. Then do that assignment. You've got quite a nice story for administration there. Next one, there's a preview feature about rolling passwords. So at the moment, Microsoft have got 3 applications that they will roll a password for you, which is LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So in the example we had, where we've got Twitter being managed centrally, we do that password assignment once, and in 2 weeks' time, Azure AD is going to go, I'm going to update that, probably to a GUID of some description, and I'm not going to tell anyone. And you know, the application is going to get a rolling password. So even if somebody gets put into the wrong group, they can't really compromise you in the same way. Now, that said, and Kirk pointed this out quite rightly, if they're in Twitter and they're logged in, they can still request the password changed from the application. So it's not completely foolproof, but obviously then that mail notification will come back into that shared mailbox, and the administration team can monitor that and deal with it as they see fit, because they'll know who has made that request. So some of the features. Microsoft are about to announce some of the features of this app launcher experience. Now, the biggest one of those is that the store, the Microsoft App Store, is going to be available in the My Apps page. So you'll have My Apps, store will appear, you click store and you'll get the store experience, that marketplace inside that My Apps page. So as a user, you're going to have a quicker link into the Office app marketplace. I can't show you a picture because I'm not allowed, I can say it. The other thing that is going to come in the near future is the administration stuff. So that's where you can, as a Office 365 administrator, say, this application will be pinned to everybody. This application will be appearing on the My Apps page, it will be in this order, and they're going to put the enhancements that everyone's asking for, which is, I want my home link top left, and I want my this link third one. So that they're not saying what the time frame of that is, but they are listening and they're hearing people requesting, okay, I want to be able to pre-configure this for every user by default, instead of Microsoft's key choices. Okay, so I know we are short, but obviously the application launcher doesn't quite fill an hour. So has anyone got any further questions? Cool, all right, thanks.